It was the morning after Christmas, 1996, when Boulder, Colorado, woke to a silence that would soon be broken by one of the most haunting mysteries in American criminal history. Inside a grand stone home, nestled in a quiet neighborhood, a family celebrated the holidays, unaware that before the dawn of the next day, their world would be torn apart in a way no one could ever truly explain. The Ramsey home, with its twinkling Christmas lights and the faint scent of pine still hanging in the air, seemed the picture of suburban perfection. But beneath that facade of wealth, comfort, and family pride, a darkness was about to crawl into the light. JonBenét Ramsey was 6 years old, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl with the poise and confidence of someone twice her age. To many, she was the little princess of Boulder, a child beauty queen who sparkled under stage lights, her pageant crowns and ribbons adorning her bedroom like trophies of innocence. To the public, she was charming, the embodiment of childhood wonder. To her parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, she was their pride and joy. John, a successful businessman, the president of Access Graphics, had built a life of comfort and prestige. Patsy, a former Miss West Virginia, found new purpose in grooming her daughter for the world of pageantry, a reflection perhaps of her own unfulfilled dreams. The Ramsey home was a mansion of wealth, filled with gifts, laughter, and on that Christmas night, the illusion of safety. But illusions can shatter quickly. The following morning, at 5:52 a.m., a frantic 911 call came through Boulder's emergency line. Patsy Ramsey's voice trembled as she told the operator her daughter was missing, that she'd found a ransom note on the staircase demanding $118,000 for JonBenét's safe return. The amount was oddly specific, eerily close to the bonus John Ramsey had received that year. Within minutes, the police arrived, expecting a kidnapping, yet what they found instead was confusion. A household in panic, neighbors arriving to comfort, friends cleaning the kitchen, officers unsure how to secure a crime scene that didn't yet make sense. The ransom note, 2.5 pages long, was handwritten in careful but erratic script. It spoke in dramatic tones, mentioning foreign factions and threats of execution if the Ramseys contacted the authorities. It was theatrical, almost cinematic, far too elaborate for a real kidnapping. But that morning, adrenaline and fear clouded judgment. The Ramseys did what any terrified parents would do. They waited, they made coffee, they prayed, and they hoped for a phone call that never came. Hours passed, noon came and went. Detectives grew uneasy. The FBI advised following protocol, but Boulder police, unaccustomed to major crimes, found themselves overwhelmed. Then, just after 1 p.m., Detective Linda Arndt, the only remaining officer in the home, suggested to John Ramsey that he and a friend search the house from top to bottom, just in case. They began in the basement. There, in a small windowless room, at the far end of the corridor, John found her, his little girl, wrapped in a white blanket, a piece of duct tape over her mouth, a cord around her neck. JonBenét Ramsey was dead. The scream that followed echoed through the house, a sound of grief so raw that even the officers upstairs froze. John carried his daughter's body upstairs, crying, shouting her name, placing her on the living room floor. In that instant, the line between crime scene and chaos vanished. The home, already compromised, became a storm of contamination. Evidence, crucial, fragile evidence, was trampled, moved, lost. The medical examiner would later determine that JonBenét had suffered a head fracture, strangulation, and possible sexual assault. The garrote around her neck had been fashioned from one of Patsy's paintbrushes, taken from her art supplies. The note, too, appeared to have been written with a pen and pad from the Ramsey home, and yet there was no sign of forced entry, no footprints in the snow, no missing valuable. What began as a kidnapping was now a homicide, but of what kind? A break-in gone wrong, a revenge crime, or something much darker? Something that had happened inside that house. The investigation spiraled. The Boulder Police Department, under immense public scrutiny, fumbled procedures from the start. The Ramsey family, instead of being seen purely as victims, became subjects of suspicion. The press descended upon Boulder, turning the quiet town into a circus. Tabloid headlines screamed of beauty pageants, jealous mothers, and hidden secrets. The image of JonBenét, blonde curls, diamond tiaras, painted lips, became an unsettling symbol of lost innocence. For investigators, Every clue seemed to lead nowhere. DNA found on JonBenét's clothing was inconclusive. The ransom note, written with an inconsistent hand, could have been staged. But by whom? Patsy's handwriting bore similarities, but no definitive match. John's alibi was strong. The Ramseys' 9-year-old son, Burke, claimed to have slept through the entire ordeal, but questions persisted. How could no one have heard the struggle, the scream, the breaking sound of tragedy? In the months that followed, Boulder's police and the district attorney's office became locked in conflict. One side was convinced the Ramseys knew more than they admitted. The other feared destroying an already fragile case with unfounded accusation. Forensic evidence failed to clarify what the human heart could not comprehend. Every test, every interview, every theory seemed to collapse under the weight of speculation. The nation watched in horror and fascination. News anchors dissected the family's every move. Analysts debated the ransom note line by line. Psychologists weighed in on the mind of the supposed killer. Some saw the work of a sadistic intruder, someone who had entered through the basement window and fled undetected. Others saw the signs of a staged scene, a desperate attempt to cover an accidental death or a moment of violence within the home. Years passed. Investigators pursued new leads, false confessions, and endless forensic review. In 2006, a man named John Mark Carr confessed to the murder, claiming he had been present that night. His confession ignited headlines worldwide, until DNA testing proved he was lying. Another dead end, another cruel twist. Technology evolved, but clarity never came. DNA samples yielded partial matches to unknown males, but none definitive enough to charge anyone. The Boulder police reopened the case multiple times, re-examining fibers, prints, and even microscopic evidence. Yet each time, the results dissolved into ambiguity. And then there was the human side, the shadow that followed the Ramseys for the rest of their lives. Patsy Ramsey, accused by many but convicted by none, stood by her innocence until her death in 2006, taken by cancer. John Ramsey, left to carry both the grief of a father and the weight of suspicion, faded from public life, haunted by the loss of his daughter and the destruction of his family's name. Burke Ramsey, the quiet boy from that Christmas night, grew into a man shrouded in silence, avoiding cameras and questions alike. The case of JonBenét Ramsey remains one of the most confounding in American history, a story that began with a ransom note and ended with nothing but speculation. Decades later, the same questions echo. Who killed JonBenét? Why was the ransom note so elaborate? How could a murder this intimate, this brutal, occur inside a family home, without anyone truly knowing what happened? The tragedy of JonBenét is not just in her death, it's in the endless uncertainty that followed. Every theory tells a different story. An intruder slipping silently through the basement, a family secret buried under years of denial, a child's life stolen and twisted into a national obsession. In the end, all that remains are fragments, a note written in fear or deceit, a garrote fashioned from a mother's brush, a father's cry in the basement of his home, and the image of a little girl forever frozen in time, smiling beneath the weight of her tiara. JonBenét Ramsey's murder remains officially unsolved, an open wound in the timeline of American true crime. And somewhere, in the cold archives of Boulder's police department, her case file still sits, gathering dust, waiting for the one piece of evidence, the one voice, the one truth, that could finally bring light to the darkness left behind that winter morning. Until then, her story lingers, part tragedy, part mystery, a reminder that even behind the perfect walls of wealth and beauty, evil can slip quietly in and never leave.